We all have a story to tell. Let's tell yours. Welcome to the Intellectual People Podcast with your host, Jason. Come together and listen to journey stories and more from interesting people. Welcome your host, Jason.
I often post on various audio forums, and I want to take this time to just thank them. In no particular order, they are audiosciencereview.com, audioroundtable.com, audiocircle.com, audiofilestyle.com, avnirvana.com, diyaudio.com, gearspace.com, and the Parts Express forum. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate your viewership and enjoy. Today on the Intellectual People Podcast, I have Dan Wright of ModWright.com. How are you doing today, Dan?
Good. Great.
Good. Tell us what ModWright is.
ModWright began as a hobby, to be perfectly honest. It has become my passion and my livelihood. Basically, it's my many ways an expression of my creative and technical self. But ultimately, in its current state, we design and manufacture high-end audio electronics for the audio aficionado. People say, I realize not everybody watching are audiophiles, but they say, well, is for like pro use or for your car? No, it's home use high-end audio, and we'll get into that. But
sure.
I started off doing mods. Last name is Wright. Not too creative.
Dan, let's go back to your early childhood. Were you always into music?
It's an interesting question. Honestly, no more than anybody else, really, I suppose. Honestly, it wasn't like a huge part of my life. The interest really in music and audio came a little bit later, probably in college.
College?
Yeah.
And which came first, music or the equipment?
I'd say music came first.
Okay.
And followed by the desire for better sounding music, which, I had my eye-opening moment, right? Like everybody does, it seems. And that's kind of where it started.
When was your eye-opening moment?
I think this true eye-opening moment was the first time I heard a tube amp, and it was a Delita 302B. I bought it used in Portland, and it just blew my mind. I'd had a decent stereo before, so what I thought was decent, Bose speakers, Sony equipment, and whatever, and I thought that was pretty cool. But the first time I heard tubes, I was really blown away, and it just became kind of a sickness from there, right?
So your big moment with a tube amp was while you were in college?
It was actually after college. In college, I had a boombox and a Discman, and I was poor, right? And so graduate engineering school, and I was like, cool, I got some money, so I bought a pair of these Bose something corner bookshelf things that I thought from Sears, right? And that was cool.
Yeah.
And then the Sony receiver and all that. So then it had some AdCom gear, but like I said, it wasn't really until I heard the Delita that I was just like, whoa, this is, there's some really great sound out there. And that started down the slippery slope of how can it be better. And
You mentioned engineering school, mechanical or electrical?
Ironically, mechanical.
Okay.
Even more ironically, I started out as electrical. Well, I'll back up a bit even further, even more funny. Spent a year overseas in Australia as an exchange student. At the time, I wanted to be a journalist, so I was going to be a writer. And then the engineer at the end of the road, that I shoveled his walk when I was a kid, and he was an engineer. I was respected him, right? And I think my father put him up to this, to be honest. But he says to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to go to University of Missouri at Columbia. I'm going to study journalism." He says, "Well, I'm not going to make any money." "Oh, it's okay." But the seed was planted, right? Not going to make any money. That would kind of suck. So then I got to looking at it. I said, "What do you do?" And he told me, and I thought, "That's pretty cool." I was good at math, so I was going to be a computer engineer, I decided. So I started off at the local university in Anchorage, and that's where I was heading. I went up to Fairbanks, which is the real engineering school where I grew up in Alaska. And for the double E's that are listening and the math majors that are listening, they're going to laugh. They weren't speaking my language, They were not speaking my language at all. And so I talked to the dean of mechanical, and I said, "What do you guys do?" And he told me, I'm like, "I can relate to that. That's cool." So I changed majors, and it all clicked, And I worked hard in college. I graduated with honors, and mechanical engineering was something I really enjoyed. So,
What was your first job out of school?
in Fairbanks, there's not a lot of manufacturing, right? So I did HVAC design for an A&E firm, and so yeah, the probably the most, I won't say this, I shouldn't say that, not the sexiest mechanical engineering. It was fine. Unfortunately, once I started there, that's the work that I knew, and when I moved to Oregon, that's the work I continued to do.
Gotcha.
It was boring. I didn't. It wasn't what I had in mind. It wasn't the robotics or the sexy job that I had in mind. And I think because of being bored at work and enjoying audio, I started tinkering with my own stuff, and it started with that 302B. Because tube circuits are pretty straightforward. So yeah.
What you mentioned robotics, is that what you really had a passion for, was the robotics and automation side of engineering?
That was something that interested me. Yeah, I was an avid mountain biker too. My senior project was on vibration analysis and designing the suspension system for a mountain bike. I did all the math and simulated all this stuff. So I had different plans, but you graduate and you want to make money.
Right.
And Design Alaska was the chic office, and it was cool. I was rubbing shoulders with architects, and it was a job.
Sure.
And it was a good place to start. And I don't like to regret things in life, because I think to do that, well, I wish I had done this. Well, if I'd done that, everything would be different.
That's true.
And I like how things turned out.
Okay.
I like my kids.
Well, that's a good thing. Hopefully they like you too.
Right.
You said you modded that Jolita tube amp.
Mm-hmm.
And was it something that you started off simple with a simple modification, or what did you do exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I had a basic knowledge of electronics, right? From even mechanical engineers, we have a double E course we take, and so I had basic knowledge, but it was really simple. Upgrading capacitors first of all. A lot of guys have done this. I mean, anybody with a soldering iron can do this stuff. Right. And so it really was a lot of self-teaching and learning via the internet, Audio Asylum. This is back in let me see here, 98, 99 maybe. And so just, it was just a hobby, like I said, and learning and sharing with people online. It started really simple. From the tube gear, it became digital gear, became the Pioneer DVD player, right? And the link DAC. Some of you may remember the MSB link DAC. It was basic, pretty affordable stuff.
And then did you start at some point modding other people's equipment?
Yeah.
And was that free?
Well, like a lot of things, some guys go, "Hey, can you change the caps on my Jolita?" I said, "Sure, man. Like, $50, right? I mean, it was just, cover the parts. I'm just some guy doing, I'm just playing around, right?
Right.
Not like felt like I was a professional charging for my time. So it was just kind of one of those things where, cool, I can make enough extra money to buy more parts to do more with my gear. So yeah, the Gelita was the start, and then the digital source, the Pioneer, and the Link deck, and it was just replacing parts. That's really all it was, and knowing what sounded better and what made a difference, and then beefing up power supplies made a difference. So I mean, I really did not have a great knowledge of electrical engineering and of audio engineering then.
Right.
That came with time. So,
were you doing dozens of these pieces of equipment at one point? And that
eventually, yes.
Well, before ModWright. Before
ModWright, it was it was a handful of
okay.
it was a handful of things, and like I said, it was just very, very just low key. I mean, it was just yeah.
And did you at one point go, I could do this for a living?
I think that came a little bit later. It was kind of like a frog in the pot of boiling water kind of thing, to be perfectly honest. I didn't realize the water was getting warm until it was. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm actually making a little money here.
Okay.
So like I said, then it was from the Gelita, the Pioneer, and then I started doing a few more of the Pioneer players, the Link DACs. I think that's where I realized I could make a little bit of money. And I started doing probably dozens at that point over time. I started doing dozens of these pieces, maybe 99-ish, right? Because the business license was taken out in January of 2000. Okay. And that's when ModWright was born. Jumping a little bit ahead, but it was this gradual process, like I said, of basically, this hobbyist that was just having fun. It was a side gig, right? And but the side gig became profitable. I was like, I could do this, and I find myself at work. The work was so cookie cutter that I was doing at the time. What I enjoyed most was the construction administration, was in the field, working with the contractors and overseeing, because I had moved to Portland by then. It was more commercial work we were doing. I enjoyed that, but the work I was doing at the office was very cookie cutter. And sorry guys, if you're ever watching this, but it was boring. and quite frankly, my mind wasn't all there, because I was thinking about what I really enjoyed.
Sure.
And that's something I've come to realize about myself. That's key, is that I've got to be passionate about what I'm doing. And I think those that are fortunate enough, I would expect yourself as well with this, if not your day job, that if you're passionate about it, it's going to be fulfilling, and you're going to do it well.
For sure.
If you're punching a clock, you're working a desk job, you're doing whatever, and you're just going through the motions, you're going to be fine, but it's not the same. It's not a life I wanted to live. And I realized that, not a big risk taker, right? It's not like I said, okay, I'm going to take, $1 million and I'm going to start this thing, right? And that's the funny thing, was that it was such a gradual, I use the analogy of a frog in the boiling water, but it didn't require any real capital to start, because there was no real advertising, just the internet and word of mouth, and it just kind of grew organically. The product that pushed me over the edge and that launched ModWright was the Perpetual Technologies P3A DAC. This was a product. Perpetual Technologies was founded by Mark Shifter, Walter Lederman, and Peter Madnick. Walter Underwood Wally, many know in the audio community. Peter Madnick went on to he was Audio Alchemy. Later, Audio Alchemy redefined. He worked for Constellation, done a lot of interesting things. Mark Shifter did a number of things as well. So these were the three guys that owned Perpetual Technology and AV123. Walter, through the forums, well, backing up a little bit, P3A DAC was a great DAC. It was about $900, I recall, something like that. And it was the first really decent piece of digital gear that I had. And I realized that, man, if you replace the op amps and the resistors, you do a few simple things. This thing's really good, right? And so, yeah, I'm sharing all this. It's not like a big secret or anything, you know. But people are sending me these things, and for, I don't know what I was charging, you know, a few $100 maybe, something like that, to go through and replace them all, you know, Bechet and Caddick resistors and, you know, all this good stuff, and really expensive Burr Brown op amps. You know, most people were not comfortable taking a soldering iron to their gear, so they'd send it to me, right? Well, you know, I had them stacked to the ceiling, and I'm like, damn, this isn't bad. You know, I can make some money doing this in my basement, right?
Right.
All the secrets are out now. I'll put the secret to begin with, but yeah, like a lot of businesses, I started in the garage, you know, the garage or the basement, right?
Sure.
It was in the basement, Well House in Portland, Oregon, and but the cool thing was, and this is where, you know, very serendipitous, Walter Lederman, and I will forever be grateful to Walter for this. Not entirely out of his own selfish interest, but that's fine. He goes, hey, he says, you know, if you want to come to CES and bring one of your modified pieces, he said, we may be interested in endorsing your work. So he's looking at it. Walter's a sharp businessman. He really is.
He is.
You know, everybody knows Wally, okay? Wally's a good guy. He's a sharp guy.
I've been to his house.
Right. And he's like, listen, you know, in Walter's mind, it was, hey, you know, there's a way to sell more product from AV123.
Absolutely.
And for me, it was an opportunity to you know, take things to the next level. So, you know, the step off the cliff, more or less, was to buy that ticket to Vegas. I think I bought a round trip ticket without even a hotel room. I think I stayed. I think I flew in on a Saturday morning and flew out early Sunday morning or something.
Wow.
And I flew there with my modified DAC, and I met with Peter and Walter and Mark. They were very nice gentlemen. They were very welcoming. I left the unit with Peter to have him look at it. I checked out CES. I came back, and you know, Mark Shifter was the most gracious one about the whole thing. He was the president of Perpetual Tech, and he said, Dan, he said, we like what you're doing. Peter approves. He said, we know these things work. It was too expensive to do it this way, right? Which is how a lot of mods work.
Right.
If you manufactured a product the way I was modifying them, it would be, you know, $2,000 or something. Nobody was going to pay that, right? That's why it worked. So Mark said, I will signature endorse on our website your modifications. Dan Wright is the only modifier that is allowed to do this, and we will honor the warranty. There was my golden ticket, man. My Willy Wonka moment right there.
Wow. It
was cool. It was really cool. So I went home and I was like, wow, right on. Got the biz license, you know. ModWright LLC was formed right then. I believe I formed it as a limited liability company because I knew that I needed some form of protection. And this is true of most people in business know this. You either a corporation or you're an LLC to give yourself protection, you know, the corporate shit. So anyway, so that's what I did, and Mark, true to his word, you know, on the website, signature on the deal, and they went, you know, 2 or 3 stacks to the ceiling, right? And this is what makes me laugh is Mark's like, we don't need any. Walter's like, no, we do. We do get a kick. We do get a cut on this. Love you, Walter. Love you, buddy. Fair enough. So we agreed on, you know, I think I raised the price a bit, and they got a cut, and that was totally cool. Still making money, and then who's the writer? Stereophile. I'm blanking. Hope I think of it later. Stereophile writer did a piece on the P1A and P3A. It was the P3A DAC and the P1A digital processor. Okay. And the P1A was going to be the room correction and all this stuff. And it's a great product. Didn't go quite the way they wanted, but the P3A DAC, which was just to support the P1A, really was a great product. So he had reviewed it, and Mark said, "Hey, if you want, they'll do a follow-up and mention you." He said, just model my unit, and I'm like, "Oh, Mark, well, who's going to pay for this?" I was so ignorant, right? And Mark's like, "Listen, we'll sell you a unit at cost. Just suck it up, right?" So learning curve. So I did, and he wrote a follow-up that was published in Stereophile. And man, to be published in Stereophile in like 2000, 2001, that was all it took. It was the coolest thing. So I'm trying to think of how long after that. I started doing audio shows not long after that. But what sticks in my head is the first time somebody called, and it couldn't have been more than like a year or two after that. He goes, "Is this Dan Wright?" "Yeah." "You're famous." I'm like, "Really? Oh, damn, I'm famous. That's cool." Just some schmuck in his basement, but I'm famous. That's awesome. But that's the beauty of the story, is that was the tipping point, right? Because much more came, and it grew organically from there. But the cool thing was, the funny thing was, I didn't have a business plan. I didn't formulate this grand plan to do this. It just organically evolved, and and because of that, I made some mistakes along the way. If I had to do all over again, of course, I'd do it very differently. But again, no regrets, because things happen the way they happen. And so from there, from there things snowballed. I was ModWright, the modifier, for a time, of course.
Right. And at this point, you're still at your house. You're working out of your basement.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And they're just shuffling in through the door. I mean, as fast as you can mod them, they're coming in now.
And the noteworthy part is the business license was taken in January of 2000. I gave notice in August of 2000 at my engineering job. So I was doing well enough by August of that year that I could walk away from a pretty decent job.
Sure. And every day until you resigned, you were probably just thinking about ModWright.
Pretty much. Yeah, absolutely.
That was really what's on your mind.
That's where my heart was. That's where my heart was. I was passionate about, because I think anybody that like yourself with this, it's your baby, right? There's a part of you in it, and it's not just pride. It's pride, yeah, but it's I don't know, giving birth to something that's uniquely you. It's very, very satisfying.
For sure.
Yeah.
And what was the next step? You resign.
Right. I resigned. My wife, I said, I can do this. And my wife's a nurse. She was working too. We had no children at the time. Children didn't come until let's see. Children didn't come for another few years. So, at that time, you could afford to live and be okay.
Right.
Things have changed. Own a house, be all right. 2 professional salaries. Well, 1 professional salary and 1 entrepreneur. But I'm not sure the exact dates or timeline. But the next step was, I started working with vacuum tubes, and there were several people along the way. Alan Kimmel being most key of which many people, not a lot of people know Alan's name. Brilliant man, very private. Worked for Grom's Instruments for a time. He had published an article about the Alan Kimmel, the hybrid mu stage, and I built the circuit. It was cool. It sounded really amazing. So I was trying, based on the Gelida, I was building different circuits, trying different things. People that audio designers will tell you that tube circuits are fairly straightforward. They really are. And the modifications to the Gelida, went beyond parts upgrades to tweaking circuitry and whatnot. So that process evolved. But yeah, the notion of how cool would it be to put tubes in a CD player, right? That was the next quantum leap.
Right.
And so yeah, that was the next step, and that is also the beginning of what became manufacturing later. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So yeah, that was the tube circuits were the next thing, and yeah.
Tube circuits within the CD players.
Correct. I was working with tube circuits, and then somebody said, "Man, could you do a tube P3A DAC?" I'm like, "That'd be wicked," but there's no room, right? This thing was the size of a paperback book.
Right.
There was just no room. I think the first product that we did it with was the Sony. I think it was the XA777 ES was the first place where I experimented with it, and I'd worked with some people, Alan and others, that helped me get a handle on some things, and but yeah, I went to a show in Silverdale. I think it was Bottlehead. The Bottlehead. It was the first RMF, but they didn't call it RMF. They called it the predecessor to RMF was BSAC, Ball State of the Art Conference. I'm forgetting the dates right now, but Doc B, Bottlehead put it on, and I think there we had it's been so long. It was the Sony 777. It was the Philips SACD 1000. It was the Sony 9000. It evolved, but this process of putting tubes in CD players became a thing.
Yep.
And not many people were doing it.
No.
There was a few high-end products. There was a French player, but it was really more about CD players at the time, right?
And was that your next big step, if you will?
Yes, it was.
Ate that up.
Yeah, and it wasn't just replacing parts anymore. It was, let's get out the power tools and let's drill holes and let's break into circuit and bypass and let's actually engineer some things.
Right.
And that's where my education as a tube designer, I really started to learn more. So yeah, like I said, the Sony 777, the Sony 9000 DVD player, the Philips SACD 1000, did a ton of those. When I say we, I took on a tech to help me with the P3A DAC mods. I got busy enough that I had a gentleman, John Garrett, you're watching this, John, many years we worked together.
Wow.
And he basically retired, actually. I think it was in 19 or 20. It might have been during COVID. He was, some personal stuff. We worked together for many years. So yeah, he was my right hand, helping me do the mods and then the tube mods. And again, it just continued to grow. I didn't really advertise as such. It was word of mouth. And I'm thinking, my son is the benchmark. He's 18. So 03 was when we released our first product, and it was a tube preamp, and it was a circuit similar to that which we had been using in the CD players, using the same tube, the 5687 tube, which is a fairly unique one, and a really good tube that I still use sometimes today, but it's not made. But yeah, so the next step was the first product, which was the SWL 9.0 preamp.
I remember it. Did you do the entire circuit design on that?
No, not entirely. No, this is where Alan Kimmel enters the picture. I got ahead of myself a little bit earlier. I had been using a different circuit that is fairly common, kind of a totem pole type circuit. Circuits that involve tubes stacked on each other, working in tandem. There's a whole number of these mu circuits. There's totem pole. They call them various things. And I came across Alan's article, which is still out there, the Alan Kimmel Hybrid Mu Stage. And I had at the time Atmosphere OTLs, which were really good. Ralph Carson great amps. And then I had a solid state amp from Sim Audio. I had a W5. And at that point, I'm like, well, the solid state's not all bad. I was thinking of the AdCom and the Sony I had, which was just garbage, right? I mean, AdCom made your ears bleed. Sorry, guys, but it did. But the Sim amp was sweet, and I was like, okay, there's bass, there's power, there's drive here. This is cool. It's not that tube amps were bad. It's just that solid state's not necessarily bad either, right? But I still wanted tubes, so I started playing around with tube preamp circuits, and this one I came across the Alan Kimmel Muse tape. And without getting too technical, the cool thing about that was it was a vacuum tube with a MOSFET on top. And the MOSFET, there's still a totem pole of two devices, but the top device, instead of being a tube, was a MOSFET. And Alan designed it two ways. One had a pentode tube on top, and one had a MOSFET on top. And I loved the sound of a MOSFET on top because it gave the tube balls, man. I mean, it was cool. You had bass, you had bandwidth, you had low distortion. And so I cobbled together this simple preamp and ran it into, the solid state amp, and I was like, this is the best I ever heard.
Wow.
The Gelita was cool. Atmosphere was great. But here I had that three-dimensionality of tubes, and I had the balls of solid state, and I had power, right? And it was really eye-opening. And so, yeah, about the time my son was born, I contacted Alan, and I said, hey, what's the deal? I said, this is your design. I don't want to, he goes, well, that design's public domain. But if you want to consult, we can take it further. And so that became the beginning of a very beautiful and long-lasting friendship and mentoring relationship. To this day, I'll email Alan, dude, I'm stuck. What's going on? And Alan's brilliant, and he'll say, well, try this or try that. And I know enough now that sometimes like, no, Alan, that's just too complicated. That's just you're just being creative for the sake of being creative. That's crazy. But at the time, I didn't have the knowledge. Alan has taught me an immense amount, and there are elements of our solid state amps, the kernels of which and whole circuits of which that are Alan's genius.
Really?
That are still used to this day. So
that's fantastic.
So yeah, it was. I always want to give credit to Alan where it's due, because Alan wouldn't even listen to this stuff. He just knew what would work, and he'd say, "We'll try this," And so the SWL9, at its heart, was 5687 too. Was the hybrid Muse circuit, and the power supply design evolved. My contribution at that time really was taking a schematic and a concept to market is a lot of work.
Absolutely.
The engineering is one thing, and it was a tougher job than I expected,
Sure.
But the finished product, looking back now, it was kind of crude to me in many ways. The machining was okay. It was very simple, but it was about a $2,500 preamp. That was good, and I sold some beta units, 2-box betas, and then I, made the regular piece. Again, CES, this would have been probably CES 03 or 04. I brought 9 of them, I think. And I put them in all these different rooms. I knew enough to know that was one way to go about it. People are like, well, this is really great preamp. Hey, use it. Boom, 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 boom. And pretty soon the word got out, because CES was really well attended back in the early 2000s.
Back then, yeah. It
was great. And, like I said, it wasn't expensive. It was about, $2,500. And Underwood Wally sold a lot of them for me. I'm grateful to him for that. But the word got out that it's supposed to be pretty good. We see it everywhere. And it was mentioned in the show reports. So again, without really advertising, without meaning to promote myself, I called it guerrilla marketing.
Yep.
Just put it everywhere, and it lit up. So,
one thing that I want to ask you about specifically, Dan, is you you touched on it about taking a blueprint to market, right?
Right.
And over your right shoulder, there's a very elegant piece of equipment there. And I'm not talking about what that is, but
Right.
the design of it and the manufacturing of it. I think it's important for people to know how much effort and that equates to money, right, in that product.
Absolutely.
The electrical design of the circuit is one thing,
Yes.
but the elegance of it is a whole nother product within itself. And is that something that you did all of the casework design
Yes.
and manufacture? You did.
Yes.
Okay.
I have early on, I had an idea of what I wanted the logo to be, and I paid a graphic designer to finalize it in a raster file. And everybody's like, well, you should, you're manufacturing, you shouldn't be mod, you should be something else. I said, no, MWI, mod is what we are. And that logo, because I knew, like BMW, car doesn't say Bavarian Motor Works on it. You know what a BMW is by that logo.
That's right.
And to this day, people know who we are, know what that is. So I knew the importance of that. Aesthetically, I like symmetry. I like clean lines. I like blue.
I can tell.
I have a wonderful machinist in Ontario, Radisson, and I went to them and I said, "All right, this is what I want." And and he made little suggestions like, well, what if we add a chamfer or this and that?
Sure.
And they were really helpful, and they do beautiful work. This is a product that has since been discontinued, but it embodies everything we do. This is the Elise DAC, Elise tube DAC.
Okay.
The tube sticking out of the top, again, kind of a signature of ours. But the players, there's no room to put the tubes in, so the tubes always stuck out, right? So a lot of our products still have tubes, sticking to the top. But to answer to further expand on the blueprint, like you say, you have products that sound and work great, but are not sexy.
Right.
You have products that are sexy and sound okay. The ones that sell are the ones that are sexy. And there's plenty of sexy products that I just think are okay. But if a product is not sexy, it will not sell. Now, that's not entirely true. There are a couple manufacturers, I won't use names, that I think their aesthetics are simple. The price points are low, and the design is exceptional. Right. And they do well in that realm. You get above a certain price point, these people have money. They want nice things. They want a nice looking piece of gear in their music room, on their rack, whatever. And I realized that early on also. It had to look good. It also had to sound good. And I didn't think it should cost a fortune. So most of our products for the longest time were in about the $3,000 range, which is, that's real money, okay?
Sure.
But, in the early, 2005-ish, whatever, when, high-end gear was, say, 5 to 10, over 10 was quite a bit. Right. Levinson, Krell, and that stuff had its, and Macintosh, of course, that stuff had its pedigree. It had its, and Levinson was very sexy.
Absolutely.
And people would pay $10 or $15, $20,000 for Levinson because it was Levinson and it was sexy.
Right.
And so that wasn't lost on me. But in addition to just the aesthetic, and the aesthetic's important, but then you gotta form and function, right? You got to deal with heat, you got to deal with vibration, you got to deal with space constraint. This is where I think my mechanical engineering really came into play. Being able to visualize, think about the heat rejection and think about everything involved. And with all due respect to double E's and digital engineers, these guys are brilliant. And they have far more technical knowledge of the inner workings of digital and of these things than I do. But they don't always have a big picture approach to,
right.
Even things as simple as fit and finish. Well, W's are brilliant, but have a very narrow focus. And so I'd like to think that, my mechanical engineering background was helpful in helping me have a more holistic approach. The gentleman from Canadian company. It's escaping me now. He was also a mechanical engineer. We did quite well, and it was beautiful stuff. And he said, "What kind of engineer are you?" I told him, mechanical engineer with the best gear. He was an ME also. But yeah, there's I think a lot of bigger companies will have, the really sharp doubly who does a circuit design, and they've got a graphic designer, right, or industrial designer they hire to do the aesthetic, and then you've got some guy in SolidWorks that puts it all together, and then you get a marketing team that decides, well, we're going to do all this stuff. Well, I didn't have all that.
Right.
I had myself, right, with a 2D CAD program and a decent ability to visualize in 3 space. I don't use SolidWorks even to this day. I wish I had it. I don't. I wish I had it. It's a great program, but I haven't had the time to teach myself to use it, and I have chosen not to hire somebody to do it for me. I guess I'm very protective of wanting to do it all myself, whether it's to my own detriment probably, but it is. So yeah, I've been kind of a control freak, I guess, in terms of wanting to control every aspect of it. And it's a daunting thing to launch a new product.
How many active products do you have today? Or current, I should say.
I'm thinking here, we've got an integrated and one integrated, 2 dedicated power amps. We've got 4 levels of preamps. And then we've got a very custom side. We've got the Ambrose line, which are 2 monoblocks and a 2 preamp. And we've got 2 headphone amps, a 300B headphone / integrated amp, and a push-pull design. So, well, that all adds up to a fairly diverse range.
Sure.
Some of these products are a bit long in the tooth, though. The 150 SE has been around 12, 13 years, probably 14 years.
And it still sells.
It still sells. It's a great design. I think it's time to redesign it and re-release it. Sticking with the basic circuit design, but there's ways it could be improved in a number of ways, and we'll get there.
You will.
Yes. The problem is the market has changed from 03, 05. It's, as many of you know, I know it all too well from the business side. The demographic is shifting, aging and changing without a lot of fresh blood, right?
Yep.
Some young people, by young I'm meaning even 30s and 40s maybe, and there's a shift towards more integrated products. The young people especially, it's an iPad, iPod, streaming world, right?
Right.
And the audiophiles are also changing. They're downsizing. They're empty nesters. They're, and they want integrated amplifiers.
Right.
So our hottest selling products, we have 2 products that are hottest selling. One is our hybrid integrated amp, and our phono stage, the PH9 phono stage. Also, again, at that $3,000 magic price point. The integrated's not. It's closer to 9, 8.5.
Right. That integrated is, you said sex appeal. That integrated to me is pure sex appeal.
I'm real pleased with how that turned out.
It is gorgeous.
That's a cool product. It's kind of a culmination of a lot of things, right? It is the amplifier stage of the 150 SE. That's about 12 years old. Okay. It replaces the KWI 200, which was a MOSFET integrated at 200 watts. I took the controls and the basic aesthetics from that. I added our best amp stage. I retooled the casework to allow exposed heat sinks for better cooling, so we could up the bias and whatnot, right? And then I added a tube preamp stage because it's got to have tubes.
Right.
So I took the basic aesthetic design of the 200 and I said, let's thicken the faceplate. Let's expose the heat sinks. Let's add some sex appeal. It was just little things, you know. I kept the digital displays, but I changed the aspect ratio, and it's the little things. But I was really pleased with how it came out. It sounds as sexy as it looks, and it's been a big hit. So
everybody has their own vision of how to test and evaluate equipment, right? Whether we're subjective or objective or a
right,
combination of both. How do
right.
you at ModWright do that process?
Honestly, the first thing I do is the rough draft is pretty much I know what the circuit I want the circuit I know what I want the circuit to be. Okay,
Okay.
fine. So let's build it and let's test it and see if we can get the noise down. Noise is huge, you know. It can't be noisy. Let's get the noise floor down, fine. And let's measure the noise floor down. Let's get the distortion where we want. Let's get the bandwidth where we want it. Okay, that's the rough draft. You know, that's the pencil sketch, if you will.
Yep.
And then let's build a mock-up and let's listen to it, because that's where rubber really hits the road. I know a lot of products are designed with measurement equipment and computer simulations, and they think that is the ultimate, you know, with the lowest distortion, the widest bandwidth. Oh, this is, you know, we've done it. We haven't even listened to it yet, the engineer, but this is it. But you listen to it, and it's just like, maybe, you know, maybe it's great, right? Or maybe it's technically it's brilliant, but it leaves me cold.
Right.
Know? I've heard other manufacturers' products that are dead quiet, very detailed, very dynamic, low noise floor, and they leave me flat. It does not do it for me. Some sound gorgeous, but not, you know, not very accurate. And somewhere in between there, for me, is the happy medium. I like to say I'm just a hair on the warm side of neutral is where I like to be.
Okay.
I can't stand clinical, but I don't like the syrupy vintage sound either. It's okay. It's not bad. A lot of tube amps have that beautiful sound because the distortion is high. It's the right kind of distortion, but it's high.
Right.
And the highs are rolled off and the bass is rolled off. It can sound great, but it's not my thing. So the short answer is, like I say, rough in the test equipment and then listen. And that's how all our products are designed.
And do you do a final test across the bench, if you will, to see where you wound up subjectively compared to objectively?
Oh, absolutely. There's continuous testing, you know, all the way, right? Once I get, like I said, the bandwidth and the distortion and the noise within the range, that's the rough draft. That's
Gotcha.
that's the caricature of what it's going to be. And then as I listen and tweak and analyze, I'm also, you know, routing, revising, improving, grounding, shielding, measuring to get the noise lower and lower and lower and distortion where it should be. So it's not one or the other, right? But the key is listening.
Right.
If you don't, you can't design by ear only, and you
Right.
shouldn't design by test only.
How many people make up ModWright?
At the moment, right? I'm thinking here, including, well, those on the payroll, physically here, including myself. There's 6. I've
Okay.
got one or two people that I consult, with. But it's not a big company, you know. It's like a family, you know, and every person is really key, right?
Right. Right.
Kristin, she's my VP. She's also the head of marketing and logistics, etc. I've got a team of technicians, and I'm, you know, CEO, head designer, head of QC, final say on virtually everything. We
I
could have
want to
grown
mention.
bigger. I could have taken on investors. I could have added engineers. Didn't want to do it.
Why?
So it's never been purely a business venture. This was not about how does Dan get rich. If it was how does Dan get rich, and this is all about business and about money, then that would be the logical thing, right? You know, you
Sure.
ramp up, you expand, you grow. Money has always been secondary to the passion for me. perhaps to my own detriment financially. I could probably be driving a Ferrari out there if I'd done things differently, but I'm okay with that. We've done well. We've done great. And most importantly, the passion has always been there, right? And that's important to me. To lose the soul of ModWright and make millions of dollars does not appeal to me. Not that making $1 million does not appeal to me.
Understood.
But not at that expense. So,
is your son interested?
In so much as he works for me right now,
He does.
while going to college and doing a great job. As one of my techs, he enjoys it. Does he want to take over the business? No.
Really?
He is on his way in the fall to the University of Portland to study mechanical engineering. I'm not sure where my son will end up. He has a very sharp mind, and he is a gatherer of information like you would not believe. He doesn't really have interest in audio. He enjoys music. He's a good technician. He started during COVID, because it was tough, right? And so he started helping me out then. And it's a part-time job for him, full-time in the summers. But no, he won't run ModWright. He'll do his own thing, and I want him to.
Yeah, and that's great. That's
my daughter. She's 11, but I don't think she's going to want to.
Well, there's still time for change. That's for sure.
No,
and maybe
Matt Weisfeld, right?
Exactly.
Sure.
Who will be on this podcast, I should say. I think for your son too, the other thing for you that's great is if you wanted to buy a seat of your favorite CAD package, he could be the operator for you. And then you don't have to worry about the information being let out of the family, so to speak.
Absolutely. And that's actually a really good idea. If I was to pay to train anybody, it would make sense to me to invest in my son's resume, my son's skill set, and to have that in-house like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's in-house, you control it, it's in the family, it gives him a skill. The other thing that it could potentially do is really get him involved in the business, because he'll understand the casework and the electrical layout, and he might just gradually want to do it after maybe 10 or 15 years, not today, but certainly having the 3D CAD guy in-house that is your son is probably not a bad idea. And he's going to need that skill in school. He's going to need that.
I had a conversation with Matt Weisfeld. Absolutely. I had a conversation with Matt Weisfeld last February at the BPI house, one of the last shows or events I did before COVID. And we had a chance to just chat about things. And he was somewhere because like a track here, but Matt did his own thing. And then later in life, he did want to come back to the company. But he told me, it made a lot of sense. Early on, he was somewhere, and somebody in the industry told him, you were right to do your own thing and decide to come back.
Right.
Because at that point he wanted to. His heart was in it. If my son were to choose after he goes out and makes his way in the world, that'd be wonderful. So
I have to ask about Kristin, because I have met Kristin at Rocky Mountain probably in early 2000s. And the fact that she's still with you and ModWright says something. And it says something in a positive light about you, for sure.
Right. Kristin's been with me for, I want to say it's been 13 years. So I assume it was Kristin you had. How early in 2000?
Well, it was somewhere around 2000.
You say early 2000s.
It's probably mid to late. It's probably 2000. I'm trying to think my first time. It's hard to remember. I would say 2007, 2008, maybe at Rocky Mountain, somewhere around there.
Yeah, she was probably probably just started working for me then. Yeah. Kristin is not my wife. She's a dear friend. Everybody assumes that she's my wife. We joke that she's my work wife.
That's right.
No, she is married and has a family of her own. But she grew up in this rural community where I live in Southwest Washington, and pretty much everybody that does or has worked for ModWright was met through friends. It's an interesting thing. I don't think a single person working here was hired through an ad or anything like that, and it's part of why we are the way we are, I guess. Yeah, but she's been with me the longest, and she's my right hand. She's a rock when it comes to, she's the yin to my yang. She's organized and OCD about things, and I'm not. And sometimes it takes that, in a business, you need people that have different skills. And so yeah, ModWright would not be what it is without Kristin.
How many countries is ModWright in currently?
Let's see: France, Germany, Denmark, Norway, Italy, Greece, Netherlands, Philippines, Vietnam, Hong Kong, China. I'd have to think beyond it. Yeah, Europe and Asia have been good for us. I pursued Asia pretty aggressively, and Europe would have been probably 12 years or more ago. The dollar was not very strong, and domestic sales were not great. And at CES, it was at the Venetian at the time, and I met different distributors. I got into Hong Kong, several different distributors I worked with until I arrived at the one I have now, Hong Kong/China. But we were doing brisk business in China and Hong Kong for a time, and in Europe as well when the dollar was weak. When the dollar became stronger, Europe sales tapered off, and then I guess the '08 downturn here is where I turned outward.
That makes sense.
And then in the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, it's been a shift back to more domestic, to where it used to be like 60-40 international. Now it's probably 40-60 or even 30-70 international.
Really?
Doing more domestic business, but still have a decent international.
Sure. Why do you think it is shifted? Is it just because of the dollar?
The dollar had a lot to do with it. The first shift, like I said, in '08, me looking elsewhere, the shift in the dollar caused things to slow down. And about that time, I went off on different tangents design-wise, and I really lost my focus as to what would really sell. Doing various tube amp designs, headphone designs. I was trying to find a path. And during that time, quite frankly, the market shifted. And all my European distributors were like, man, I want a $3,000 integrator. I'm like, I can't do that. Sorry, can't do it. And so then I worked on some really high-end tube stuff. And we sold some, and it was really good. And I learned a lot from it. And I think we gained some cachet and some respect for it. But then I found my way back to, the phono stage, the integrated, the new integrated, and kind of found momentum again. Right. So there was, like I said, there was a period of time where, and the reason we were able to survive during that time, I should explain that the modification business is one branch of ModWright. It's 90% domestic, and it's all direct, no dealers, right?
Right. So
that has kind of been the cash flow engine consistently for a long time. And the manufactured products could be doing well or slower, and they combined, they always got things done. So I think the mod business was doing really well at the time when the dollar became strong. And so I was able to kind of rely on that while I took different directions. So that's why the company was able to keep moving forward. And then Oppo was the mod we were doing. I mean, talk about huge.
Really?
We were doing, I mean, 5 or 6 a week consistently.
Wow.
Every week. I mean, I had one guy that was just doing Oppos, and they were scheduled out, and this is $2,500 mod.
Right.
So that was just, that was in and of itself. And then we had our manufacturing and everything else we were doing. So that was good. Then Oppo says, guess what, guys, we're out. And I was like, oh, goodness, what are we going to do? So that really forced me to look hard back at our manufacturing again. And that's when I really worked hard on the 225 and a phono stage at a lower price. And it took time. It took longer to get that to market than I expected. And I was getting close to releasing it right when COVID hit. It was just a soft release right before COVID hit. And then during COVID, of course, it went into full production. And that time is interesting because the audio market was actually quite strong.
Right.
I never would have predicted that.
You and many others.
But last summer I was working 5/12 every week. It was just me and my son. Kristin was working from home, and I was doing everything I could just to keep up.
Wow.
And my one tech, she was having a baby. Another tech, his age and various reasons, I was worried he got the virus. So he was out of commission for a time. Kristin working from home. Another person got laid off during COVID. It was weird, and and I joke that something inside of me broke during that time because I'll just be honest, I suffered serious burnout during that time. A lot of business people, work 12 hours a day every day, 7 days a week, and it's fine. That's not my choice in life to work that hard. I'd rather have a life balance. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you work hard, you work what's needed, but if all you do is work and don't see your family, it's no good. You may be rich, you may make a lot of money, but what do you really have? I don't measure wealth that way. So, I got in the groove of doing it, but it was pretty serious burnout, and so it was very interesting. Last year was a very interesting year.
Looking forward for ModWright, what is the next step?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I'm really I'm glad to say that my period of burnout and COVID fatigue, whatever you want to call it, is past, and I'm excited about the future. I've got a product in mind that I'm not going to say much about, except that it's a tube product.
Okay.
It's going to be in the $1,000 to $1,500 range, and it's going to be an accessory to be used in any system. Some people know about it. I've posted about it, and I'm being consciously vague, I suppose. But it's affordable. If I'm right, it'll sell in volume, and I'm really going to focus on products that are just really good and affordable. I think the $3,000 price point per product, integrated at 8, is essentially 2 or 3 products, right? So that price range is where I intend to focus. I think that's where the future is, and then where a lot of businesses. This market, this high-end audio has diverged, as many of you know. The ultra high-end, stupid high-end, beautiful, gorgeous, that few guys can afford, right? And bless those that do it. And there's some wonderful companies that are making amazing products, and I fully support them. It's not a business it's not the type of business I want to be in. I'd rather do something that's more consistent.
Yep.
And so analog is going to be big. Tubes will always be in our thing. I'm not a digital guy. I won't do a DAC design. Don't expect a DAC design from me. Not that I said I wouldn't do it, but it requires a consultant to do the digital work. And I did that, and it didn't work out. And I don't really want to go there again.
And that is a perfect segue into my next question. Would you be willing to work with a consultant that was a digital designer, but they need that person to do the casework? So it is a ModWright product, but the circuit is someone else.
Oh, absolutely. I have a potential product. It's not digital in this case. I think it's okay to. Fern and Roby is a company that Christopher Hildebrand is the president of, and we are discussing a similar arrangement with a product in which his name will be on it.
Okay.
So a bit kind of the inverse of what you're saying, but
Right.
Either way works, and either way would be acceptable. On the back, it'll say engineering by ModWright, but all the casework will be Tectonic's design, and the product will be a Fern and Roby product, and it'll be our circuit. Conversely, if I met a digital engineer that we could have a meeting of the minds and work something out. He does the digital work, and maybe we marry it with tubes, maybe we don't, or maybe he just does, like you said, the digital work, and we put it in our casework. I'd be good with that.
Okay.
I'm not too proud to take someone else's engineering and call it our own. Pride's not really a something that gets in my way. But the reason I haven't hired a consultant to do our own digital product, I guess it's really hard to coordinate our design with someone else's design.
Understood.
I asked for a quote to do a turnkey design for something, and the amount of zeros at the end of it was quite staggering. I said thanks, but no. Because quite frankly, digital changes too fast too, right?
Absolutely.
So if I had a relationship with someone where we had a licensing deal, either way, his way, my way, where we could do that, it'd be brilliant. But digital's it changes too fast.
Is your integrated built on a foundation such that it's modules? So
Absolutely.
it is.
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked. That's one of the things I learned from the KWI 200 to 225. If you were to look inside, and there's photos online, the 200 was kind of a monolithic build. I mean, I put everything on one circuit board, thinking, well, let's be efficient, right? So there's 5 circuits on one big circuit board. Well, that's fine until something needs service. It becomes very difficult. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted this design to be modular. The other thing is, being modular, you can redesign portions. So for instance, in the 225, there is a power supply module. There is a capacitor bank module, preamp module, control module, power stage module, input stage module, etc. Every single left and right channel has their own, with the exception of the power supply. It's for both stereo, preamp stage, stereo. If I wanted to upgrade the tube preamp stage, I could redesign it, the same deal, and drop it in.
Nice.
And say, hey guys, I got send it back in, I'll put a new board in it for X dollars, boom. So yeah, that was very important and a very good decision.
Do you offer a phono stage such as your PX9 in a module for the integrated, or does it have to be an external box?
I do offer a phono module for the integrated. It's a $350 card. It is a solid state phono. It's an high output MC. It's good. It's intended for the guy that listens to some vinyl, right?
Casual listener.
Yeah, I mean it's a card. It's about yay big, right?
Sure.
And so for that guy that listens to some vinyl, cool. But the guy that really enjoys vinyl, instead of 350, it's 2900, right?
Right.
But that's a killer phono stage. And I decided not to offer a DAC module again because A, I didn't want to design it, and B, I could have made it modular, but again, really tough. I tell people, I'm like, listen, for $300 to $500, you can buy
Right.
brand X DAC that's this big. You just sit on,
Right. Yeah.
And so
and where does it stop?
And that's exactly. And so that's my attitude. The 225 is something I see someone buying and keeping. Analog doesn't go out of date.
Right.
You can buy any number of DACs and plug them into the integrated, and off you go.
Right.
But you don't have to change out the amp or anything like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Dan, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have that you would like to share?
We haven't talked about vinyl at all, and that is a passion of mine. And I'll be brief, but I think vinyl is the way to reach younger people. The resurgence of vinyl, I've always liked vinyl. I've always thought it sounded great. Digital's come a long way, and I like digital, and digital's convenient, and there's good digital. But I'm really passionate about analog, and I think that it's going to continue, and I think it's important. And like I said, I really hope that it is the bridge that helps young people get introduced to high-end audio. So yeah.
Is it possible at all to produce a $1,200 integrated for that young 20-something college kid?
Well, Eric Shook, if you're listening, he wants me to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. It can be done. It's not a place I want to go.
Okay.
It would pretty much require Class D amplification, which I'm not a fan of, or a chip amp design. Much of it would have to be outsourced from Asia, and I know of a company that's done it domestically, and they're doing well with it. I hear it's great, so I guess it can be done. It's too low of a price point for me.
Understood.
Not enough. There's not enough meat there. So
I get it.
Yeah.
Dan, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate it.
I want to thank you. You approached me, and I'm just really grateful. I love what you're doing. I love the way you do the interviews and why. This is not really an audio interview. It's cool. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. For everyone listening, I'll put the links below. Please go visit Dan at ModWright.com. He is on audiocircle.com. I want to mention that he does have a circle at www.audiocircle.com, and there's a ModWright circle there. He's very active on that, and you can also communicate with other owners. Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Find us on YouTube and Facebook at The Intellectual People Podcast and online at theintellectualpeoplepodcast.com. Check back for exciting new episodes.